Yes, it is. All right. John chapter 7 is where we were last time. We'll start there again today. Just a quick little bit of review. In John 7, Jesus has left the region of Galilee, wherever he's been running around up here. He has been encouraged by his brothers. I don't know what the right word is, but I don't think it's with the best of intentions. They say, hey, you should go to the Feast of Tabernacles down in Jerusalem because, hey, you're a big star. Everybody wants to see you. You should go down there and see your fans, essentially. So he says that he will pass, but and he says you all should go. So he gives them his blessing or whatever, and they take off, go to Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles, and a few days later he decides he's going to go. So he ends up in Jerusalem, all the way down here for this major festival of the Jewish people. It's an outdoor camping festival, a week of roughing it to remind everybody of their time in the wilderness during the Exodus. So Jesus has gone down now to Jerusalem. When he gets there, he goes to the temple courts where he is going to do some teaching. We didn't have a picture. Yeah. So on the Temple Mount, where the temple complex is, the temple itself is kind of a big building. Everybody can see it from everywhere. But it's tall, but it's not really got a great big footprint. It sits in the middle of a series of courtyards. There's the court where the priests go in to do their thing. Outside that is the court of the men, or the court of Israel. Then outside that is the court of women. Then outside that is the court of the Gentiles. And that's a really big one. That takes up almost the entire temple mountaintop. Everybody can go in there. If you are Jewish, you can go beyond that. If you were a Jewish man, you can go beyond the court of the women. If you were a Jewish priest, you can go beyond the court of men. So, I mean, there's kind of an exclusion every time you got to show your pass or you swipe your badge or whatever. But Jesus is usually teaching somewhere around the entrance to the court of the women, near the court of the Gentiles, because that's where the most people could be. There are places to sit in the shade. All along one side, there is a colonnade. Do you know what a colonnade is?
A walkway with columns.
A colonnade is made up of columns. So like you see it in ancient architecture that like every 4 feet there's a big column and it goes all the way down to the corner and then it turns and there's roof built on the top of that. That's the colonnade. Usually it's 2 or 3 or 4 deep across and long. So that's usually where Jesus is teaching, somewhere at the end of the court of the Gentiles, probably in some shade for himself and for the people. And he's been, during this Feast of Tabernacles, he's been doing some teaching. We talked last time about how excited the Jewish leadership was that Jesus was there. Not excited. That they are calling into question all kinds of things about him. They believe that he's a deceiver. They most recently in our study last week, they say this is not the Messiah because he comes from Galilee. He's called Jesus of Nazareth, not Jesus of wherever the Messiah is going to come from, not Jesus of Bethlehem. He's Jesus of Nazareth. And we all know that the Messiah doesn't come from Nazareth, which is in the area of Galilee up there on the top. He's not the guy. He's not even a prophet because he's making all this stuff up on his own. He's a faker. He's a false teacher. Don't listen to him. But the crowds hear him and say, there is something different about him. We like what he has to say. He does miracles, and we've been looking for the Messiah to come. How could we expect the Messiah to do any more spectacular miracles than this guy is already doing? I mean, that's inconceivable. So there's very mixed opinion about who Jesus is in Jerusalem right now, and that divide is just going to continue to grow. So the temple guards were the security force from the Temple Mount who worked for the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were sent to collect Jesus when we got together last time, and it didn't happen. So we're going to pick up with that again here in verse 45. Finally, the temple guards went back to the chief priests and the Pharisees, who asked them, "Why didn't you bring him in?" The guards replied, "No one ever spoke the way this man does." "You mean he has deceived you also?" The Pharisees retorted. "Have any of the rulers or of the Pharisees believed in him?" "No. But the mob that knows nothing of the law, there is a curse on them." Nicodemus, who had gone to Jesus earlier and who was one of their own number, asked, "Does our law condemn a man without first hearing him to find out what he has been doing?" And they replied, "Are you from Galilee too? Look into it and you will find that a prophet does not come from Galilee." Okay, so the temple guards, who are not Roman soldiers, they're Jewish guards. They have gone to collect Jesus because the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, the Sanhedrin, the chief priests have sent them to do that. They listen to Jesus' teaching. And so when they go back to the Sanhedrin, they got nobody in handcuffs. They have not brought Jesus back with him. And when the leaders ask him about it, what's their comment? What do the temple guards say is the reason they haven't brought him back?
Never heard anyone speak like him.
We never heard anybody like him before. And that could go in a lot of different directions. I don't know if they're impressed, or they're moved, or they're challenged, or some combination of that and more. Jesus does have a way about him when he speaks. And after they listened to him, the guards were not prepared to bring him in. And so the answer that they give, we've never heard a man like this. There is an emphasis in the original language on man. It's the last word in the sentence, which means that it's the most important word in the sentence. So they are saying, we've never heard a man talk like this before. So these temple guards have got it at least a little figured out that this is no ordinary teacher. This may be the first time that they've ever heard Jesus speak, but they understand that he has got a gift and some ability that they've never heard the likes of before. He is something special. And so they don't bring him in. Well, I can't arrest him. He's the greatest speaker I've ever heard. He can't be just a regular guy. I'm not arresting him. You arrest him. No, I'm not going to arrest him. You arrest him. So they go back to the chief priests and the teachers of law, the Pharisees, all of that that Jewish ruling council. And the Pharisees cannot believe that the security force, these guards, have been sucked in by Jesus. They have been duped by him. And so they asked this really snide question. Have any of the Pharisees believed this guy? No. Yeah, there's a reason. You shouldn't believe him. That's the point they're trying to make. The ironic thing is that it's probably not accurate. They seem to think that they've got 100%, Pharisee agreement on their side. Were there any Pharisees that are following Jesus? No, of course not. Well, actually, that's not true because of what we see here in just a minute. There are at least a few who are considering it. Back in John chapter 3, we met a man named Nicodemus. Nicodemus has come in John 3 to visit with Jesus under the cloak of darkness in the middle of night on behalf of the Pharisees. And he says to Jesus when he meets him in John 3, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God. I think that we at the beginning of that sentence is pretty important. It's not just I believe that you're a teacher. It is we know. We know that your teacher has come from God. He is not alone in this. There are clearly other Pharisees who are thinking that Jesus very well may be the Messiah. He is at least a prophet who has come from God. He has a good conversation with Jesus, and likely would go back and report the conversation to the rest of the Pharisees. So here in John 7, 4 chapters later, Nicodemus, as a part of this Jewish ruling council of Pharisees, priests, and scribes, says, now wait a minute. You have condemned this man as a false teacher without having done any research of your own. I mean, we haven't brought him here. We haven't invited him here to come and talk to us. How many of you have actually heard Jesus with his own voice in your own ears? No, nobody has done that. So they found this man guilty without any kind of research at least, or a trial at best. Now, maybe that's what they thought they were going to do by bringing Jesus in with the temple guards, but that feels sort of like, swatting a fly with a tank. It's just that's so very heavy-handed. An invitation probably would have been a better way to get him to show up. Does our law condemn a man without hearing him to find out what he has been doing? I feel like when we read through this, that we do get a little bit of insight into who Nicodemus is as a guy. He seems, from the 2 times that we have read about him so far, and the one more time that we'll read about him in John 19, that Nicodemus is a good man, that he is concerned about righteousness, not just checking off boxes like many of the other Pharisees, but really trying to understand what it is that God wants. He's a good, righteous, and conscientious man. Again, we read about him having a conversation with Jesus in John 3. We read about him here in John 7, essentially defending Jesus, or at least wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then in John 19, when we see him again, Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea are the ones who take the body of Jesus to the tomb and prepare it for burial. Not even his own disciples will do that, but Nicodemus, this very good, exceptionally righteous, godly man, is involved in taking care of the body of Jesus. So I feel like if you need to name somebody after a good guy in the Bible, you really can't go too wrong with Nicodemus. I think he is a good egg. Now, when Nicodemus says, "Now, wait a minute, fellas, does our law condemn a man before hearing what he has been doing?" That question just sends the rest of the Pharisees up in arms. Like, I can't believe you're defending this guy. What's wrong with you? We all know he's a crook. He's a shyster. There's no truth in him, and they then turn on him, which is usually the way. Somebody asks a question, and so you're asking a question to defend this guy. Well, we're gonna eat you as well. So they accuse him of being a Galilean. Oh, you're one of them, huh? You're Galilean too, just like everybody else. Well, you need to sit down and be quiet. The whole message that they give, are you a Galilean? The message is that ignorant rednecks from Galilee could not possibly know any better. These hill jacks from up the creek might believe that Jesus is the Messiah, but no one with half a brain would buy any of this stuff. Okay, the people in Jerusalem believed that everybody who lived in Galilee was uneducated, ignorant, and a rube. We get another little bit of insight in that in towards the end of that last week of Jesus, when Peter is by the fire and he gets asked 3 different times, "Hey, are you one of his followers? Are you from Galilee?" And it's his accent that gives him away. So, Reuben Bennett comes in here and starts talking like, "Oh, you're not from around here, are you?" No, that sweet Georgia drawl is the giveaway. And most people have attitudes about the accent that you have. For a Galilean, it just says you're a nincompoop. You're an idiot. You don't know anything. You're unschooled, uneducated, just a redneck, hilljack, hillbilly. Why don't you go back home and catch fish? Because the Pharisees have been to school. They're all polished and clean and neat, and they speak the right way. They use the right vocabulary.
So since they had to know Nicodemus more, I mean, it wasn't their first introduction. They had to know that he wasn't from there, so they decided, they were just really digging at him for that.
Yeah. To call him a Galilean is a big slap. It is an insult. Maybe the people from Galilee wouldn't have thought so, but anybody who knew anything would have realized that they were slapping him down and calling him uneducated, unsophisticated, and not real bright. And the interesting thing is that they say, what is it they say about prophets there in Galilee? There's no prophets from Galilee. Okay, well, actually, that's not true. There were a lot of prophets who came from the region around Galilee. You may have heard of some of these before: Jonah, Nahum, Hosea, Elijah, and Elisha were all from the northern end and not from the area around Jerusalem. No prophets come from Galilee. Well, yeah, they do. But the point that they're trying to make is that if Jesus is from Nazareth, which is a big hill, it is right here, but about halfway between the Mediterranean and the Sea of Galilee. It's on it is a big hill that you can see sticking out for a long time. They think that's his hometown. We know that he was born in Bethlehem, which is down here near Jerusalem. And if you go back to all of the Matthew and Luke stuff about Jesus's birth, Joseph's family is from Bethlehem because he's descended from David. Mary is also descended from David, although that's not as clear in some of the story. But they come from Nazareth to be counted in their hometown, and then at some point in the first couple of years, they go back up to Nazareth, where they will live and work. The Pharisees don't have this information because they don't care to. They could find it out if they ask a few questions, but they've made up their minds. They know he's called Jesus of Nazareth, and so the prophet that's promised is not going to come from Nazareth. The Messiah doesn't come from Nazareth. So this guy is not the Messiah. He is not a prophet. He is just a faker. We're not going to listen to him. He's deceiving the people, and he's going to cause trouble with Rome if we don't get this guy under control. He's going to get the people so excited. All this crazy white hot nationalism is going to come boiling up to the top, and they're going to want to rebel against Rome, and Rome is going to come in here and crush the Jewish people one more time, destroy the city, and that'll be the end of us. That's what the Jewish leadership is concerned about.
Do you think that was their main concern? Because I read that somewhere else, that they kind of were on equilibrium with Rome, and they didn't want to mess that up.
I think that is probably the biggest thing, because it's all about power with them, all about power and control. As long as they keep everybody in line, Rome is going to let them do whatever they want to do. They want to keep doing their Jewish religion, have their Jewish culture, all that stuff, that's fine. But if they get too noisy, if they start causing problems, Rome will come and slap that down, because that's what Rome does. Everybody's got to fly right and stay inside the lines, or the Roman military is going to eliminate them.
He was a threat to their own power too. They ruled the Jewish nation under Rome, and he was, if they started listening to him, they'd be listening to Pharisees.
Well, and he did challenge all of the Pharisees' traditions, so I guess he really got under their skin.
There's a lot of reasons why Jesus was not real popular with the Jewish leadership. Part of it's because he was constantly saying, that's hypocritical. You say one thing, but you do another. If anybody's a faker, it's you, because you're just pretending to be righteous when on the inside you're yucky and gross. He's also in trouble with them because there have been people, at least for most of the book of John here, that have said out loud, this must be the Messiah. They've tried to make him king, but he would kind of dissolve through the crowd. They couldn't get a hold of him. The people are ready for the Messiah to come. They want Rome gone. And the Pharisees know that Jesus is sort of poised in the public view to be that guy. So we're gonna nip this right now. We're gonna have him brought in, we're gonna question him, we're gonna be done with it.
Do you think there might have been some other secret believers from among the Pharisees? Because when you go forward to Acts, it's like all of a sudden a great number of the Pharisees.
I think so, and I think probably Nicodemus, if he's not the ringleader, he's at least the spokesman for that group. Who's not afraid to go and figure out if Jesus really is the guy. If he really is the deal, we don't want to miss it. He is one of the few who is open-minded enough and clear thinking enough to say, well, we should examine this. He's doing some crazy things and is teaching some remarkable lessons. So it would be great if John could have given us some hints here, like out of all the Pharisees, like is this a big group, a small group? Are there just 2 or 3 of them that think that maybe Jesus is something that'd be great information to have. But as all of this unfolds, certainly after the death of Jesus, there are more of them, including the Apostle Paul, who come to believe that Jesus actually is the Messiah. Any other questions or comments or deep thinking about anything so far? I'm going to assume that you are like me. And that when I read through some of this stuff, I tell myself, well, if I'd been in Jerusalem, I would have known that Jesus was really the dude. I would have believed that Jesus was really the Messiah. I wouldn't have been one of those hard-headed, stiff-necked Pharisees. I would have been on the Jesus train right out of the station.
Seeing how they acted when they found out he was resurrected.
Yeah.
You know?
My belief is that my hope is that I would have been one of those people. But I know based on how I've reacted to other things in life, like, yeah, probably not. I would have been a late adopter and I would have been skeptical and I would have taken forever and been campaigning against it, or at least being cautious and tell my kids to stay away from that guy. And so we are now at the tail end of chapter 7. It's about time. So the next account, if you have your Bible open, you may have some kind of notes right here at the end of John 7 before John 8. In my Bible, that whole next passage is in italics, along with the note. Here's what I have to say about John 7:53 to John 8:11. The account is one that is very well known. It really paints a picture of Jesus that is really sort of remarkable and attractive and shows really who he is. However, the origin of this next account is uncertain. The account itself is probably historical. It probably happened, but the manuscript evidence tells us that it wasn't always right here. So this chunk from 53 down through 8:11 it does appear in a lot of Greek manuscripts, but not in the earliest ones, and not in the most reliable ones. It does show up after the 6th century. It shows up in a lot of those manuscripts, and it shows up in various places, like a little earlier in John or a little later in John. One manuscript even has this story over in Luke, in his gospel. So there's some differences about it. The way it's written, the style of the language that's used, the style of writing is not like anything else in John. So that's why a lot of biblical scholars will say it's not original to John's gospel. When he wrote it down the first time, this was not there. But that they're not necessarily saying that the account didn't occur. It just didn't, it wasn't written down for the first few hundred years. Do you understand what we're saying here? It probably happened, probably just like this.
Yeah, they just didn't know it at the time. First manuscript was written.
Yeah, when they were writing it down, this wasn't there, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. There's all kinds of stuff that I've done that's true and historical and accurate that it will not be written down in the story of James Sayers. Does that mean if it's not in the story, it didn't happen? No.
I'm sure glad of that.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, let's go through it. We'll start in verse 53. Then they all went home, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Mount of Olives would be outside the city of Jerusalem. Actually, in that picture of Jerusalem right there, as you're looking west towards the city, you're standing on top of the Mount of Olives to take the picture. So it's that green valley below is the Kidron Valley. There's the Garden of Gethsemane is down at the bottom right side of that picture. Now there's all kinds of cemeteries and things that are filled in there, but Jesus has left the city to go out to the Mount of Olives. That's where he'll stay. Bethany, where Mary and Martha and Lazarus live, is just on the other side of the Mount of Olives. Maybe that's where he's heading. Or maybe he's just sleeping underneath a tree. It is the Feast of Tabernacles. So at dawn he appeared again in the temple courts where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, sir." "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Now go now and leave your life of sin." Again, that's a great exchange between Jesus and the leaders and this woman. He's been teaching in the temple courts. He's right there, probably at the edge of the court of the Gentiles. And all of a sudden, in the middle of his lesson, Pharisees come up There's this big pack of them that come. There's a fuss in the middle of it. They bring a woman. I would imagine, at least in my brain, they sort of push her forward and throw her down in front of Jesus and lay out the situation. They have apprehended a woman in adultery. She has apparently been brought right from the bedroom. I don't know if she's got any clothes on. I would imagine that she is not in an okay state of mind. But they've brought her to Jesus to get him to make a statement. They believe that they'll be able to trap Jesus with his words and his actions because of everything that they know about him, all the things that he has said, all the stuff that he's done. They believe it's possible that Jesus will just forgive this woman right from the get-go, and they'll be able to say, see, he doesn't even follow the law of Moses when it comes to an offense like this, a capital offense. He is a heretic. He needs to be arrested and executed. The law is pretty clear. If you want to stick your finger here and flip back to Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10. Leviticus 20:10. If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress are to be put to death. That could not be more clear, terse, and succinct. If you catch people in adultery, they're to be executed.
Great.
It is absolutely blackest black and whitest white. Okay, then go to Deuteronomy chapter 22. Deuteronomy 22, verse 22. There's in this, it's a little bit longer paragraph, 22 down through 24. And we won't look at all of it, but the application is right. There it says, if a man is found sleeping with another man's wife, both a man who slept with her and the woman must die. You must purge the evil from Israel. Now, I'd like to believe that there was probably not nearly as much executing going on, because people would realize that the punishment for this behavior was pretty severe. It's not a slap on the hand. It's not community service. It is death. Those kind of relationships are absolutely opposed to God's plan. Deuteronomy goes on to say, in the rest of that paragraph there, that the parties will be taken out to the gate of the city and they would be stoned to death. That's what these Jewish leaders have come to ask Jesus about. Okay. Moses says right there, Leviticus 20, Deuteronomy 22, we caught this woman in adultery. The penalty for this is death. We've all got a rock. We have one for you. What should we do, Jesus?
Where's the man? Where's the man?
That is the question. Which is why I believe that this whole deal is an absolute setup. I believe they got, Larry from the other side of the Pharisees to say, hey, you're the youngest looking one, best looking one of all of us. We want you to go. We got to catch Jesus. So we want you to go take this chick out for dinner and drinks, spend the night with her, and we will come in and bust this up. We'll bring her in, but you can run away. Is that what really happened? I don't know. But everything else that I know about the Pharisees and their absolute desire for control and power screams that this is not beneath them. It's a sting. They think they're really going to get Jesus by doing this. Because I believe that the definition of adultery is two people. You really can't commit adultery by yourself. So there's always going to be two people adulterating together, if that's a verb. So again, I think this is a setup. I think it's planned by the Jewish leaders, and that is why that there's no man accused. Do you have to go along with that? No. You can write your own movie in your head. But when I get my $500 million to make my movie, that's how this one will play out. Okay. They think they've got him. Because if he says, let her go, then he's an enemy of the Jewish state. If he says, you're right, give me a rock, she needs to die, then all of these crowds that have followed Jesus for all these weeks and months, everybody who keeps saying, oh, he's a great teacher from God, he's wonderful, he's miraculous, he's so compassionate, he does all these wonderful things for so many, they're going to go, now, wait a minute, he just killed this lady. So they think they've got him. So Jesus, here she is. What do you think we should do? And he gets down and he starts to do something with his finger in the dirt. We don't really know what he's doing. This is the only time where it says that Jesus wrote anything. Is he writing words in the dirt? Is he drawing pictures in the dirt? Maybe he's writing down, I don't know what, the names of all of the guys. Maybe he's writing out of some other kind of a Bible verse from the Old Testament. We really don't know. It is a huge mystery. So while he's down there doodling, they're still after him, like, what do you think we should do? What do you want us to do with this woman? What do you say, good teacher? Give us your answer. What does... And so he stops scratching in the dirt and he stands up and he says, those who are without sin can throw the first stone. That the law says throw a rock. But I'm telling you, and that's typically what Jesus does. He'll take an Old Testament command. He'll take something from the law that is this big around, and he will give it a much bigger context, a much bigger picture. Like, yeah, this is what it says here, but the bigger principle is this. It's not just about finding somebody caught in adultery. What I'm telling you is that you're all guilty of sin. You're all worthy of death. And so if there's some of you here who are innocent, you're not guilty of anything, by all means, throw the first rock at her. And then he gets back down in the dirt and starts to draw. In my vengeful, vindictive mind, Jesus is looking at the faces and he's writing down Cody Gwynn, 1997 income tax, speed limit on I-15. I think he's making a list. Okay. And there's Steve. Oh yeah, let me write that one down. I don't even say, I'm just going to write that one down. He looking at all these people. Now, you who is without sin, because I made a list right here. You go ahead. And who leaves first? The old guys. Two possibilities for that. Number one, Well, because they're older, their list is probably longer. They've had a lot more time to be guilty of sin. And hopefully as well, they are wiser and realize the truth of what he's saying, that, oh yeah, I am guilty of a lot, maybe of this very thing. And so they all drop their rocks there in the temple courts. And eventually all of them leave till it's just Jesus and just this woman standing there in a bathrobe, sobbing, red-faced, humiliated, probably got dirty knees and legs from where they've pushed her down. And I just paint a whole picture in my head of how this woman must feel for what they have done to her. Man, where'd they go? Is there nobody who is going to accuse you? Where's your judges? They've all left. And so if there aren't any accusers, there's no one to judge, and there's no one to condemn, or they already had. Jesus won't judge and condemn her either. He has every right to, because he's not guilty of any sin. He actually is the only one there who could have thrown a rock. But he has chosen not to judge her. He's chosen not to condemn her. But because he is full of compassion and grace and mercy for this woman. Mercy is not getting what you deserve. She deserves the death penalty, but Jesus gives her mercy. And I think he also gives her grace, which is getting all the things that you don't deserve. He says to her, go. Sin no more. Leave your life of sin behind. Be different from here on out. Repent. It is the invitation to it for sure. Hopefully when we get to heaven, we'll meet this lady and realize that she did repent. She did leave behind a life of sin, and that she did believe that Jesus was the Messiah and her Savior. Now, he doesn't say that she's innocent. He doesn't say anything dumb like, honey, it's okay. They tricked you into this. It doesn't give any of that kind of stuff. What she has done is sinful. But he's not going to condemn her for it, and tells her to go and to be different. He's more interested in her, more interested in saving her and helping her to move and to change. And so he just ends with that. Go. Sin no more from here on out. I love that story about Jesus. I want to believe that that is how he deals most often with all of us. You sweet, stupid child. Go. Don't do this anymore. Be different from here on out. Change your ways. Don't keep doing this same thing. What do you think? Cody agrees. Is there anything else that you see in this particular account that means something special to you? I'm not fishing for anything specific, just curious.
One thing I was thinking about is when we get caught doing something that's bigger.
I'm very confident she was afraid.
Jesus says you can commit adultery by yourself. It's in your heart.
He does.
It's probably not the case here, but
No. Yeah, if you go back to the Sermon on the Mount, if you've looked at a woman with lust in your heart, it's the same as adultery. The actual act, the physical act, obviously takes two. Well then, to quote Jesus, go and sin no more. We'll wrap it up here this morning here at John 8, 12 for next time. If you want to go back and check things out in previous Bible studies, you want to do some reading ahead, you're certainly encouraged to do that. If you're not doing a Bible reading plan so far in 2025, it's not too late to get one going. There's a blue million of them. You can find them online. You can print them. You can download them. You can sign up for the app on your phone, and they will give you whatever you want. You want a chapter a day. You want a book a day. You want a verse a day. You want to do only Jesus, only the New Testament, only the Old Testament, only Psalms. There's every
Something.
configuration for whatever it is you're looking for. 5 minutes a day, whatever. If you would like to do that, but don't know how to get started, need some help, I would love to help you with that. Yeah. Uversion.com is a really great Bible app. It comes with a bunch of pre-programmed plans that will show up on your phone. So, all right. Uversion, YOU version.com. You can go there and download their app from your website, or you can hunt for it in your Play Store or whatever it is that your phone does to get apps. It'll even read it to you out loud in whatever translation you want. With a British accent, the guy sounds like he's from the middle of Detroit, some kind of guy from it's all there. Okay. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you the next time. I'm going to go ahead and stop